Okay, so this is the key to rational expressions number 9, and on this worksheet you are dealing with rational equations. And so there are 3 problems on this worksheet. So let's look at the first one. So in the first one, you have this equation, x minus 6 plus 30 divided by x is equal to 5. And so you want to solve this rational equation. So remember, rational equation is an equation where you have at least one fraction containing variable expressions. And so basically we look for the main part. If you see a variable in the denominator, a polynomial in the denominator, then you're going to be dealing with a rational equation. Okay, so but remember, the first thing you have to do is to factor your denominator. So all these are denominators ones right here: x over 1, 6 divided by 1, 5 divided by 1. The only variable expression I see that's in the denominator is x, but it's a monomial factor, so I really cannot factor that. And so therefore the LCD is just going to be x. Now you got to find your restrictions as well. So the restriction, remember, whenever you're dealing with a rational expression and you have a variable in the denominator, your variable, you got to check to see what value of the variable makes the denominator 0. So if we look at the variable x, when is this 0? When x is 0. So x equals 0, so x cannot equal 0 would be a restriction. Okay? All right, now once you find the least common denominator, remember the whole the next part is to multiply every term by the least common denominator. And the reason is so you can clear those denominators, make those denominators factors of 1s. But every fraction has to be multiplied by x. Okay, so what we did was, if you look at the left side, there are 3 terms here. See, 1, 2, 3, and there's only 1 here. So let's put this in parentheses, the left side, since there's more than 1 term, 1 fraction. And we're going to multiply that by x like that, because what I do to one side, now I have to do to the other. Okay? All right, now we're going to distribute. Notice there are 3 fractions here, so all 3 has to be multiplied by x. So x times x is x squared, right? And then minus x times a negative 6 is a negative 6x. Now be careful here. Okay, so x, this is what we really have. Let me go ahead and write it. So minus x times 30 divided by x. Y'all agree? Okay. Equal, that should be equal, and then that's just 5x. Now, let's go ahead and reduce this part here, because remember, the whole point of multiplying the LCD, we said, was to get this to be a 1. All these already had factors of 1s in the denominator. But now we'll have a factor 1 here, because these x's divide out. Now remember, always put factors of 1 in their place. Don't just cross these out. All right, so we have x squared minus 6x minus 30 equal 5x. Okay? All right, now listen carefully. So I went from a rational equation to a quadratic equation. How did you solve quadratic equations in the previous lessons that we've done? Well, remember, you got to put this in standard form. So let's go ahead and subtract 5x from both sides. And notice I'm aligning my like terms. What you got to do once on each side. Once here, once here. Now let's combine like terms. I get x squared minus a negative 6x and a negative 5x is a negative 11x minus 30 equal, and that's 0. Okay? Now we're going to factor the left side. So in this lesson, whenever you have a quadratic equation, it should be factorable, because we haven't talked about the quadratic formula yet. So it should be factorable. So let's go ahead and factor this. And when I factor this, let's see, I get x minus, let's see what's going to work. 15 and 2 will not work. Let's see. Okay, so I just noticed something. You see where this was a plus 30? And then I wrote minus. I'm not sure why I did that. That should be plus, right? Okay, so plus 30, plus 30, plus 30, plus 30. And the reason why I went back and I checked was because what I had originally could not be factored. I was like, well, something's wrong there because it's supposed to be factorable. All right, so yeah, so be careful whenever you write things, you can easily mess up with those signs, and you saw that it happens. So if you get to a point where you're kind of stuck, like we had here, where this was a minus 30 and you couldn't factor, maybe it may be that you made a sign error somewhere in here as you went through the process. And that's what happened here. Okay, so now it should be fixable. So that's going to be 6 and 5, right? So x plus 6, oops, sorry, x minus 6, x minus 5. And I knew it was minus because the middle sign's negative. So that should work now. A negative 6 times a negative 5 is a positive 30. And then a negative 6x and a negative 5x, if you look at the outer inner, that gives you a negative 11x. Okay, now once you get to that point, remember the next step is to set each factor equal to 0. So x minus 6 equals 0, x minus 5 equals 0, and then now you have these linear equations, and you solve for x, so x equals 6, x equals 5. Now remember, the next step is to check to see if any of these are restrictions, and they're not, okay? So what that means is that if you were to check each one into the original, then the left side should equal the right side. And let's just check one of them, because I mean there are 3 problems that we have, and I really am trying to keep this less than 25 minutes. All right, so let's check x equals 6 just to show you what you would do. Okay, so you go back to the original, right? And so we have 6, where we see an x, you substitute 6. So I have 6 minus 6, see that? Plus 30 divided by 6, and we'll see that's going to equal 5. Well, 6 minus 6 is 0, correct? And what's 30 divided by 6? 30 divided by 6 is 5, so that equals. And you could have done the same thing with 5. If you check x equal 5, we get 5 minus 6 plus 30 divided by 5, right? And I want to see if that's going to equal 5. Well, 5 minus 6 is a negative 1, though. Be careful. And then negative 1 plus, and then 30 divided by 5 is 6. And negative 1 plus 6 is 5. All right, so those are your solutions. Those are your 2 solutions. Okay? All right, so remember in worksheet number 8, your rational equations ended up being linear. In worksheet number 9, you now see that you can get quadratic. Okay? And then you factor. All right, so that was number 1. Okay, let's look at number 2. Number 2, we have x plus 3 divided by 5x plus 6, and that's going to equal 6 times x plus 4. All right, so first thing you're going to do is you're going to factor your denominators. But notice that in this rational equation, my denominator is 5x plus 6. It's a linear factor. The GCF is 1, so there's anything else I can do here. Same thing here. So the least common denominator, remember, has to include every factor you see. So I see a 5x plus 6, I must use it. I see an x plus 4, I must use it. So there's your LCD. So your LCD is this. Okay? Now we got to find the restrictions. Okay, restrictions. So you set each factor equal to 0. So find out what value of x makes this denominator 0. It doesn't matter what the numerator is, it's the denominator. Because remember, you can't divide by 0. It makes it undefined. Over here, that's easy. So what value of x makes this 0? Well, negative 4, because negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So negative 4 will be one of your restrictions. But again, what you do is you take each factor in your denominator, set equal to 0. So 5x plus 6 equals 0, and you solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. I get 5x equal negative 6. Then divide both sides by 5. I have one of my restrictions. So one of my restrictions is that x cannot be negative 6/5. Okay? Now let's do the other one. So the other one, we have x plus 4 equals 0. So subtract 4 from both sides, I get x equal negative 4. So there's the other restriction. X cannot equal negative 4. Okay? All right, now, so those are your 2 restrictions. So those are the only 2 numbers. Those are the only 2 real numbers that will make my denominator 0, which means that the rational expression would be undefined. Each of those will be undefined depending on which one you substitute. All right? Now, the next step is to multiply both sides by the LCD. So notice there's just one fraction each side, so I'm not gonna put parentheses like I did with number 2. So no parentheses are needed here. So I'm just going to say LCD times this. So I have this fraction, x plus 3, divided by 5x plus 6, times the LCD, 5x plus 6, times x plus 4, equal 6 divided by x plus 4, times the LCD, 5x plus 6, times x plus 4. Okay? All right, now remember the whole point of multiplying by the LCD is to get these factors in your denominators to be ones, and now they are because you can reduce. 5x plus 6's divide out. The x plus 4's divide out. Now be careful, don't do too much in your head right here. Write it out. So here's what I have now. X plus 3 times x plus 4. But I got to put that x plus 3 in parentheses. All right, so basically what's happening now, you're going to be multiplying two binomials because x plus 3 times 1 times x plus 4 is this. So when you rewrite this, make sure you put in parentheses because you have a binomial times a binomial equal. And over here, that's just a monomial times its binomial times 1, which is just this. All right, so now we have this. So when you talked about this a while ago, when you had this kind of equation a while ago, remember this is quadratic because if you follow this out, you're going to get x squared. So what we did, remember, was we had to multiply each side out. So you had to get rid of the parentheses. So using a FOIL here, I get x squared. The outer is 4x, the inner is 3x. I get 7x. 3 times 4 is 12. Over here, if I distribute the 6, I get 6 times 5x is 30x. 6 times 6 is 36. So you see you get this quadratic equation. Now remember, I went from a rational equation to a quadratic. So to solve a quadratic equation, we need to put it in standard form. So you got to bring every term to the left side. So let's do one at a time. Subtract 30x from both sides. So notice I'm aligning my like terms. And so I get x squared. 7x and a negative 30x is a negative 23x plus 12 equal, this is 0, 36. Now subtracting 36 from both sides, I get x squared minus 23x, and then that's going to be what? Negative 24 equal 0. 36 minus 36 is 0. Okay? All right, now let's go ahead and factor this. So remember, once you get to this point in these lessons right here, these quadratic equations are factorable because we haven't talked about quadratic formula yet. So multiply, factor this. So it looks like it's going to be x, minus 24x plus 1. Okay? And then notice that would now have to use the zero factor property. So x minus 24 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. So when you have two factors as product of 0, one of them has to be 0. So that's the idea of that zero factor property. And then now notice I went from a quadratic equation to linear. So my solution would be x equal 24 and x equal negative 1, as long as they are not restrictions, and they're not. So those are your two solutions. So if you were to check this back into the original, you would see that the left side would equal the right side. All right, let's go to number 3. So let's see. So number 2, let me write down the answer number 2. So number 2, the restrictions we said was negative 6/5 and negative 4. And our solutions were x equal 24 and x equal negative 1. And number 1, the restriction was 0. And our solutions was x equal 6, comma, x equal 5. Okay. Number 3. So this is number 3. We have 4 divided by x plus 3 minus 1 divided by x plus 4 equal x plus 8 divided by x squared plus 7x plus 12. All right? Okay, so we have this rational equation. I have variable expressions in the denominator. So if you're going to solve this rational equation, remember the process that we're using is we're multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. So to find the least common denominator, I got to first of all make sure that all these variable expressions that's in the denominator are factored. So x plus 4, x plus 3 is linear, and the GCF is 1. I cannot do anything with this either. But here I can factor this trinomial. So when I factor this, it looks like it's going to be x plus 3, x plus 4. Okay? And now let's find the least common denominator. So your least common denominator must include every factor you see. I see an x plus 3, I have to use it. I see an x plus 4, I have to use it. I see an x plus 3, I already have it. I see an x plus 4, I already have it. So there's your least common denominator. Always use the least. If you square both of those, you're going to be in some issues here because you're going to get stuck very quickly. Use the least. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. Let's find the restrictions next. I forgot to do that. So the restrictions. So when is x plus 3 equal to 0? So x plus 3 is equal to 0 when x equal negative 3. So there's one of my restrictions. When is x plus 4 equal to 0? Well, x plus 4 is equal to 0 when x equal negative 4. So there's another restriction. Now go to that. Always go to all your denominators. X plus 3 already taken care of. X plus 4 already talked about. So those are the two numbers that when you substitute in for x, you're going to get 0 in the denominator, which would make it undefined. All right, so now let's multiply both sides by the least common denominator. So I have two fractions here, so I'm going to put that in parentheses. So 4 divided by x plus 3 minus 1 divided by x plus 4 equal, over here, that's just one fraction, but remember, just like we did in the previous problem, leave it in factored form. So I have x plus 8 divided by x plus 3 times x plus 4. Okay? So all I did was I just rewrote the original problem. I put parentheses around on the left side because there was more than one term. Here, I also left it in factored form because the LCD is in factored form. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply both sides by the LCD. X plus 3, x plus 4 times x plus 3, x plus 4. Okay? All right, so now the first thing you do is distribute. Don't divide these out because that's incorrect because all this is in parentheses. So if you divide this out, it looks like you're only going to be multiplying this by x plus 4, which is not correct. It's also going to be multiplied by both of those factors. All right, so distribute first. So I have 4 times the LCD. So 4 divided by x plus 3 times the LCD, just like this, minus this fraction times the LCD times this, x plus 3, x plus 4, equal, and I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this because I do have enough room. So x plus 8 divided by x plus 3, x plus 4 times the LCD. Okay? All right, now at that point, this is what you would do. So remember, the whole point of multiplying by the LCD is to get all these factors to be factors of 1 in the denominator. So the idea of multiplying by the LCD is to clear your fractions. So that's the point. So the x plus 3's divide out, the x plus 4's divide out, and all these factors divide out. And so now we have 4 times 1 times x plus 4 is 4 times x plus 4. Write it out like this first. Don't do too much at once. Minus, now be careful here. This is 1 times x plus 3 times 1. Okay? Now be careful. See what some students are going to do. They're going to say 1 times x plus 3 times 1 is x plus 3, and they're going to say this. That's incorrect. That is incorrect because you're subtracting all of this product. And this product is a binomial. So you got to put that in parentheses. So leave it in parentheses for now, just like we did this. See the coefficient, see you have this binomial right here. 4 times 1 is 4. You have this binomial right here. 1 times 1 is 1. So if you need to, put a 1 right here if you have to, just like we did this. Put a 1 there if you need to. Okay? Equal, and then x plus 8 times 1 is just x plus 8. So notice I didn't have to put that in parentheses and say times 1 because it was a positive 1. See this right here, you're subtracting. So you just got to be careful. Okay, now distribute. And you see the whole point of putting that in parentheses was because when you distribute this part here, you get negative x minus 3. And if you didn't have parentheses, you would have said negative x plus 3. And so you already would have had an error. Okay, over here, that's 4x plus 16. 4x plus 16 equal x plus 8. So notice in this case, I went from a rational equation to a linear equation. All right, let's combine like terms. 4x minus x is 3x. 16 minus 3 is what? 13 equal x plus 8. And let's bring the variables to the left. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. So I get 2x plus 13 equal, this is 0, combine like terms, 8. Subtract 13 from both sides. it looks like I get 2x equal, this is 0, what's that, -5? And then divide both sides by 2, I get x to be -5/2. And so, assuming I did all this work correct, then your solution would be -5/2. All right, now check the restriction. It's not a restriction, so we're good. See that? That's not a restriction. So that should be the solution. Okay? All right, if you want to check it real quick, although it's going to be a little bit more challenging, let me just show you what you would do. Okay, let's just check it. See how you can use your calculator. So go back to the original, and here was the original equation. Always go back to the original equation. And always use, don't use the factor because you could have messed up here. So just go back to the original. So 4 divided by x plus 3 minus 1 divided by x plus 4 equal x plus 8 divided by x squared plus, what was that, 7x plus 12. All right, so wherever you saw the variable x, you're going to substitute -5/2. Now this is going to be challenging for us. So 4 divided by, see there's an x, I'm going to substitute -5/2. And then also notice that -5/2 terminates. So let's just write as a decimal since it terminates. So that's -2.5. So -2.5 plus 3 minus 1 divided by -2.5 plus 4. Since it terminated, you can do that. Equal, and then -2.5 plus 8 divided by, remember you're squaring now right here. So -2.5 squared plus 7 times -2.5 plus 12. All right, so see, it's going to get a little bit complicated. All right, so this is what I would do. Okay, so you see where you have 4 divided by -2.5 plus 3? Some of you are going to go directly to your calculator. You got to be careful because there are 2 terms down here, so you're going to need parentheses. So in other words, you're going to have to say 4 divided by, in parentheses, -2.5 plus 3. Okay? So you're going to say 4 divided by, in parentheses, -2.5 plus 3, close the parentheses, press equal, and you get 8. So this is 8 right here. Minus, do the same thing here. 1 divided by, in parentheses, -2.5 plus 4. Okay? So 1 divided by, in parentheses, if you leave the parentheses off, then it's going to be incorrect. And so you're going to think your answer is wrong. -2.5 plus 4, close the parentheses, and that's 0.666 and so on. But remember, you can always change it to a fraction. So let's change it to a fraction. So second PRB, you already knew that was 2/3, right? Okay, so minus 2/3. Okay, so on this side I get 8 minus 2/3, so 8 minus 2/3, just like this. And I get this. Now let's change that. Now you all know that decimal point 3 repeating is 1/3. So if you didn't, use your calculator. And you see you get 7 1/3. So this is 7 1/3, right? Okay, now let's look at this right here. So let's do it in little parts here. So the numerator, -2.5 plus 8, let's just do that part first. -2.5 plus 8 gives us 5.5. So that's the numerator, right? The denominator, let's figure that out. So let's just write the denominator as you see it. So in parentheses, -2.5 squared. Okay. Plus 7 times -2.5 plus 12. So my denominator is 0.75. So now I'm going to take 5.5 divided by 0.75. So 5.5 divided by 0.75 equal, and I get this. Now notice that this is this, right? Isn't that the same thing? So that is 7 1/3. So those are equal. So that means that this is correct. All right, so when you're checking and you have fractions, it can get pretty complicated. And if you're not very comfortable using your calculator with all of these expressions like this, you may make an error somewhere. So if If you do, don't, and you go and you follow through all through the process, and those are not equal, it doesn't mean this is incorrect. You just got to go back and check and see if maybe you had an error putting stuff into your calculator. Okay? All right, so that is the answer to number 3. So number 3, the restrictions were -3 and -4. And our solution was x equal -5/2. All right, so that is the key to the worksheet number 9.